Okay, everybody. Howdy. Let's talk legislative branch here. You should have a worksheet that you can fill out. You can do this by hand if you want. You can print my worksheet. You can type it in. Um, and hopefully that gets started. Okay, so we are talking legislative branch. The legislative branch it's arguably the most important branch of the entire government. It was meant to be, right? So it was put Article 1, the first article, the very first mention of our government is talks about the legislative branch. And it was designed to be, more important, more powerful than the presidency, than the executive branch. They're designed all to be relatively equal, but the intention was really that the people, that Congress, that the elected legislators of the citizens at the relatively small level, like at the House of Representatives level, has a lot of power. And over time, that just kind of switched. Over time, the executive branch has, the presidency has really become more important. So that's what we've got. All right. So legislative branch makes the laws. There's a link here. I'll provide you with this. There's a link here about the Constitution itself, and you can read it, and we will have you do something else along the way that deals with that. But for now, we're just going to kind of give an overview, relatively broad overview of the legislative branch. So first of all, let's talk differences. There are two chambers of the House. Bicameral is the terminology. One is the House of Representatives, and the other is the Senate. All right. So the House, let's just focus on this side over here. The House of Representatives is by far the larger of the two. It has 435 representatives. There's actually currently 3 vacancies. So currently there's 432. This is March of 2021. And that's a permanent number. That number was set in the early 1900s. They passed a law to kind of cap the number at 435. It didn't used to be that way when we were a lot smaller. There were less, and then they decided we needed to we can't have it just keep growing as our population grows, and we've got a couple thousand members of the House. That would be kind of unrealistic to properly function. House members serve a much shorter term than senators. They serve only 2 years, so they're elected kind of constantly, almost running for election. The moment they're elected, they got to start fundraising again for 2 years later. They're elected within each district, so every state is divided up with districts, unless they're so small that they only have one district. There's a few states that only have one representative, and the entire state is the district. But for the most part, states have multiple districts. It tends to be younger on average than the Senate. It tends to be a little less prestigious. Many senators, prior to being a senator, were members of the House. And it's a little lower. It's lower visibility unless you're like Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker. You're just kind of one of 435 members. I can name, I could probably name a dozen or so members of the House, but there's 435 of them. So a lot of them are just kind of, it's a job. They go about their business doing their job. The Senate is much smaller. It's got 100 members. And as you should remember, every state gets 2 senators. So this was where it's equal representation in the Senate. Every state gets 2, so there's 50 states. You got 100 members in the Senate. They serve longer terms. They serve 6-year terms. Let's see if I can make my picture smaller. There we go. Serve 6-year terms. What it is, it's basically 1/3 of the Senate is elected every 2 years. So you have this, kind of continual. There's always, every 2 years there'll be an election where 1/3 of the Senate can lose their job, which means 2/3 of the Senate sticks around. And so you've got a decent level of consistency in the Senate, where the House can go through kind of much more drastic changes, because every 2 years they can all be voted out, right? Where every 2 years only 1/3 of the senators can be voted out. Okay, it's elected by the entire state as opposed to just a district. It tends to be older. I don't have the numbers right here, but the average number, the average age is 7 or 8 years older on average in the Senate than in the House. It's somewhere in the 60s. 62 years old average, something like that in the Senate. 55 or so years old. Someone should look that up. Email me. Let me know what the exact numbers are. It's a little more prestigious. You're a senator. Like the 2 senators from California were much more high profile, and you're 1% of the vote. You're one of 100, as opposed to the House. You're only, what is that, 0.23% of the vote. Your one vote is much smaller, and you tend to have higher visibility because you're just generally a more higher profile figure than members of the House. Not all members, but many members. Okay, those are differences. Here are some kind of constitutional differences. Who can become? How do you get in the House or Senate? Well, if you're in the House, the lowest age is 25. I believe a 25-year-old was elected to the House this year from North Carolina. If you have to be a citizen at least 7 years, which means you can be born in another country. You can immigrate here. You can be an immigrant. You can immigrate here and get your citizenship and become a member of the House. You got to be a citizen at least 7 years, though. And you must reside in the state that you're representing. Must be a resident. The Senate, slightly longer, slightly older. You got to be at least 30. And you have to have been a citizen at least 9 years. Those are really the only constitutional requirements, other than there is one that says you could not have committed treason or conspired against Americans. That was part of the 14th Amendment. But in the original Constitution, these are the requirements. Okay. All right. Let's check out some demographics of the House. Demographics is who's in there. How many of each party, males and females? I can go deeper. I can go religion. I can go other ethnic groups. But these are the ones I've kind of chosen, some of the big topics. So I've given you 3 Congresses here. Okay. From 2016 to this would be 2016 to 2018, from 2018 to 2020, and then the most recent, the November elections, the current Congress. Okay, so you can see that in 2016, this is the year President Trump won his term in office, is after Obama had left. It was that election, and Republicans, really a landslide Republican dominant House, 247 to 188. Okay. 2 years later, that changed. Well, almost not quite an exact flip, but the Democrats gained a lot of seats in the House. So Nancy Pelosi had been the minority leader in 2016, and she became the Speaker of the House in 2018. She had been the Speaker of the House, by the way, back in 2008, 2010, when Obama first took office and the Democrats controlled the House, and she was the Speaker then. The Republicans took control. She became the minority leader. The Democrats got control again, and she became the Speaker again. It's an elected position, so Democrats elect their leader, and that becomes the person in charge of the House. Okay. You can see, however, this year, although the Democrats still have control, it is a lot tighter. 221 to 211, and there's actually 3 vacancies. So those vacancies can be filled through, I'm not sure what the vacancies are, special election, governor appointment until an election. So I don't know where those vacancies, they'll eventually get filled, and I'm not sure where they'll fall, the Republican side or Democratic side. But it's tight. So there's still a Democratic majority, but boy, if there's any Democrats that kind of jump ship on a topic, the Republicans can maybe get what they want. Thus far, there has not been a lot of that. The male-female ratio, you could see 4 years ago, it was a lot more males, 351 to 84. Only 84 females in the House. Pretty male-dominated. It's still pretty male-dominated, but it has improved, right? Now it's 118 to 314. So every year there's more females that get added. And you can see I did a breakdown of the Democrats versus Republicans. Of those 118, The majority, really the vast majority of them are Democrats. Although Republicans are 29, and last time there was only 15, 14 more female Republicans have joined, and actually 2 less Democratic females. So female Republicans have made some strides forward in the last couple of years. What about ethnicity? With Hispanics, only 35 Hispanic members of the House. There were 42 last time. I don't have the party breakdown. So we've actually lost some Hispanic representation in the House. On the African American side, we have 56. That is quite a bit more than the 44 from 4 years ago, a couple more than the 54 from 2 years ago. And you can see that it is almost all Democrat. I don't have the numbers this year, but it's going to be really similar. 53 Democrat here to only 1 Republican 2 years ago. And Democrats just tend to much more reliably be, or African Americans much more reliably Democrats. What's interesting about this is the Hispanic portion of our population is something like 20% of our population. And with 35 Hispanic members of the House out of 435, you're looking at about 8% of the House is Hispanic. So Hispanics in Congress are way underrepresented. There should be 3 times as many Hispanics in Congress if we are to be proportional with what the United States looks like. African Americans are actually about right on target. There are about 13% are African Americans in the House, and that's about the percentage of our national population is 13%. So African Americans are actually pretty equally represented. Is that a word? Represented in the House as they are a proportion of the population. Hispanics and Asians, however, are not. I don't have Asians here, but they're way off as well. All right, let's go to leadership. House leadership. So by far the most important position is the Speaker of the House. Okay, so that's Nancy Pelosi. There she is. I've mentioned she's the only female Speaker of the House, and she's now been it twice because the Democrat majority has been the majority, then the minority, then the majority, and she's been a leader that whole time. So she's been a long time powerful person in the House. She's from California, by the way, the Bay Area. And nothing happens in the House without the Speaker's ultimate approval. Really, no laws get passed. She's in charge of putting people on committees, other Democrats on committees. She's in charge of who the chairperson of committees are. She can not let a vote come to the House floor. So if she doesn't like a bill, it's pretty much not going to happen unless there's kind of an uprising within the membership. So Republicans, good luck of getting any bill that you suggest through to actually get voted on. It's just probably not likely going to happen. Okay, other positions in the House. The House Majority Leader, not the Speaker, is a guy named Steny Hoyer. That's him right here. He is kind of the second in command of the House. Seems like he should be first, but the Speaker is first. The Majority Leader, he's a Democrat, is kind of second. The Minority Leader, in this case, is the leader of the party that is not in the majority. So we're not talking minorities like Hispanics and African American, like ethnic groups. We're talking the minority party in the House, and that is Kevin McCarthy, and that's him right here. He's from Bakersfield. Kevin McCarthy did represent San Luis Obispo County until 2010. A part of our county was part of his district, and then we redistricted after the census of 2010. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And then there are whips, and I don't have their pictures here, but the whip, their job is to whip up the vote, is to make sure that that really their party vote. So if you're the Democratic whip would be, hey, we have a Democratic bill. You need to vote in line. Democrats, you need to vote for this bill. This is what the Democrats want. And sometimes some of the Democrats waver because of their position within their district or what state they might be from and what their personal opinions might be. And so the whip's job is to kind of make sure everyone's a team player. Okay, and they're in theory the second or third in command of their party, but that becomes kind of their primary job. Okay, so the House Minority Leader, the Majority Leader, and the whips. Those are kind of the positions you need to know. And you should know the names you should know the people that I'm giving you. So Kevin McCarthy is Minority Leader. Steny Hoyer, strange name, but that's his name. Majority Leader, the Majority Leader. All right, how does the House break down right now? Oh, sorry. How's the Senate break down? My bad. Senate is interesting right now, right? So the 2020 Senate became really interesting because it is, although it looks like the Republicans have the majority, they really don't. There are 48 official Democrats in the Senate, and there are 2 independents. But those 2 independents, it's called caucus, C-A-U-C-U-S. They caucus with the Democrats. They basically vote with the Democrats. So like Bernie Sanders ran for president as a Democrat, but he is technically one of the 2 independents. The Republicans have 50. So what it comes down to is when there's votes, for the most part, it's 50-50. 50 Democrats, 50 Republicans. And so who's in charge, Mr. Hubert? Well, we should know who's in charge. Who's in charge is the Democrats. Why? Because the tie-breaking vote is cast by the Vice President of the United States. The Vice President, of course, we'll get to a little bit later, is the President of the Senate, the presiding officer of the Senate. And in that case, that VP can come down and cast a tie-breaking vote. So even though it's 50-50 on those votes, in this case, Kamala Harris, the Vice President, who's a Democrat, can come down and make it 51-50. All right, and then in terms of diversity, the 76 males, 24 females, still over three quarters of the Senate is male. We know that in the nation's population, over half, it's like 51% to 49% is female. So it is not a great representation for the Senate. All right. Next, there are 6 Hispanics. There's only 3 African Americans. Once again, that's way underrepresenting both. Something like 13% of the population is African American. Something like 20% is Hispanic. So those numbers should be 20 and 13 or something close to that, and they are nowhere near it. Basically, the Senate is really a bunch of old white males that dominate the Senate. Old white guys, with a few exceptions. Okay. Here we go. Senate leadership. The constitutional leader is actually the vice president, as I just mentioned. So the vice president is named as the presiding officer of the Senate. However, they can only vote in the case of a tie. Okay. In the absence of the vice president, there's somebody called the president pro tempore is the constitutional leader. President pro tempore means president like for temporary. In other words, the VP is not there, the president, so the president pro tempore is the leader. It is one of the senators. I forget who it is right now. I did not look it up. You can look that up. You can maybe look that up and type it in the comment. Maybe I'll give you some extra credit when you submit this. And actually, when it comes to like order of succession to the presidency, president resigns, dies, and is impeached. The vice president becomes vice president. If the VP cannot do it, then it's the Speaker of the House. If the Speaker of the House cannot do it, then it's the president pro tempore. So, constitutionally important position. And it is an important position, but the reality is what really matters is the majority leader. The majority leader is the most powerful position in the Senate. And then the minority leader. So currently, the majority leader is Chuck Schumer. The minority leader is, I'm sorry, the majority whip is Dick Durbin, which I probably won't test you on. I'm not going to give you the name. I just gave it to you. I don't give you the picture. This is Chuck over here. And then this is Mitch McConnell over here. So Mitch McConnell is the minority leader. He was the majority leader for the last 16 years. Until this last election, where, as I can remind you, there were 2 Senate runoff seats in Georgia, and they both had been held by Republicans. And in the runoff, the Democrats beat them, and that made it effectively 50-50. And so that put Chuck Schumer, who had been the minority leader, in charge of the Senate as the new majority leader because of the tie-breaking vote of Vice President Harris. All right. And there are whips, and the whips are considered kind of second in command in the Senate. And they did the same job. This is a little breakdown of what the Senate seats and the House seats, and red means Republican and blue means Democrat. And you get over here and you can see there's a long run in the middle here where Democrats control both from the 1950s to the 1980s, early 1980s. And then the last 20 years, 30 years, 40, whatever it's been a little bit of back and forth. The House, you can see, has been pretty much, this is no longer, by the way, this is off. So if you go to today, they're both blue. This goes to 2017. So there's kind of a breakdown. Okay. Duties, what do? They try to make this fast. They legislate. They're legislators. They make laws. That's legislation. They are members. They're members in committees. Committees have really important jobs. They screen bills. They oversee. They maybe monitor the executive branch. It's in those committees that you might have seen the hearings for, like the impeachment. They don't really show a lot of hearings otherwise, but they might do investigating, have hearings on potential like Supreme Court nominations. The committees are really where the work gets done. Okay. They represent their constituents. If you really needed something done, you would want to reach out to Salud Carbajal. He's our representative in California. And they are politicians. They are raising money. They're trying to keep their constituents happy and things like that. I would just tell you, committees are super important, super important. They are where things happen. If you are part of the majority party, you get your kind of plum committee assignments. The majority party, will be the leaders, the chairpersons of the committee, and seniority matters in this case. The longer you've been around, the more likely to be a chairperson, and the chairs are pretty darn powerful. They can kind of decide what bills they're going to talk about, what laws they want to debate, what witnesses they're going to call, how hearings are going to go, if they're going to have a vote on that bill. If they don't vote on a bill to become a law, if it doesn't so-called get out of committee, the bill doesn't become a law. It doesn't happen. So committee chairpersons are super powerful, super important. And some committees, not all committees are equated equally. Some committees are even more important than others. There are a bunch of committees. This is from 2017. So this is no longer accurate in terms of leadership, but I just want to give you the idea of the types of committees: armed services, transportation, financial, appropriations, foreign affairs, judiciary is super important, ways and means, that's like money, homeland security, veterans affairs, all those various things. I know we're hiding some of those. Rules committee, there's a bunch of committees. When it says ranking member there, that is they don't call it minority member in this case. They call it ranking. It's a nicer way to say they're the Democrats in this case on the committees. Today you would have all that flip. The chairperson would be a Democrat, and then ranking members would all be Republicans. And that's now changed. Okay, I'm going to skip that. That's all I got for the day. I'm going to come back and do reapportionment at another time. Thank you very much.